Good morning, beautiful people from around the globe. Welcome back to my channel here on Bugasiswe, where we talk about real life issues with an emphasis on the reintegration of ex-offenders back into society and also crime in general. Allow me to acknowledge my state president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, and each and every one of you that has tuned in. I greet you. On the table today, we have a dish called Prison is Nice and a glass full of Prison is a Walk in the Park. So, before we get to our main dish, let me give you a starter by way of a small snippet of my experience in jail. In 2005, after I was arrested, I was put on a waiting trial for a month, awaiting bail. And 2 weeks into my incarceration, I was brutally accosted or assaulted by an ex-inmate or a fellow inmate. At that time, the 2 weeks into my incarceration, I was still highly traumatized by what I had done. And I was not eating, I was not sleeping, and I was really having a hard time. So much so that on the day of this incident, where this woman attacked me, I found myself still under the blankets by the time it was parade. Parade is something they do in each and every prison where they count. It's like a roll call. They count each and every prisoner in the prison. So usually this happens around about 7 o'clock every morning. So this lady that accosted me, my attacker, she was a so-called gang member within the prison, and she and her canoes, they ruled the cell where I was staying in. Robbery, theft, assault, intimidation, rape, and chaos was the order of the day, every day. I say rape. You wonder why, because it's a female prison. Well, it does happen by means of broomsticks or other objects that they take and they shove it brutally into your private parts. So on this day, this lady saw me still in bed, and she ordered me in no uncertain terms to get out of bed and go to stand parade. And at first I ignored her, and then she got a bit more vocal, started swearing, and in fact her actual words at the time was, "Hey jou masapi, staan op haar jou." And I tried explaining to her after that you know what, I'm not feeling fine. And she wanted none of it. She didn't want to listen to me, and she actually got more agitated to the point where she started threatening me. And eventually I said to her from under my blanket, because I had closed my head with the blanket, I said to her, you know what, if you want me to stand parade, then take me to parade, because I do not have the power for it. And that's exactly what she did. She came to where I was sleeping on the bunker bed. I slept on the top bed, and she grabbed me and threw me down on the cement floor and proceeded to kick me all over my body. She kicked my ribs, she stamped on my head, and just went wild, kicking me. After that, she yanked me up and started beating me with her fists. And then she also pulled me around the cell and threw me into the bunk beds, the iron beds. And somewhere I must have knocked my head. And it sort of drew me out of the catatonic state that I was in. And I realized that I had to do something, because this woman was not showing any signs of stopping or easing up or anything like that. And the fact that everybody in the cell was scared for her, and the other half of the cell was cheering her on in what she was doing, I didn't really have any hope of anybody intervening. And at that time, the officials were still busy doing parade in other parts of the prison. So I was left to my own devices, if I can say, my survival instinct. So as she was beating me and throwing me around, I got a cap and I ran and I jumped on one of the bunker beds, and I hit a window to get a piece of glass to defend myself with. And at the time I had cut myself, but I didn't notice. So as I turned around, there she was coming for me again, and as she was wanting to hit me again, I just reflexed, kicked in, and I stabbed her with this thing in her neck. And as I was doing this, I just totally froze, because the realization hit me that they could be charging me for double murder now. I could be charged with the second murder. And I was totally frozen as I was standing there with this glass inside this woman's neck. The commotion and the screaming from the people in the cell and others in other cells obviously drew the attention of the officials, and they came running and they barged into the cell, and I had a male member grabbing me from behind and telling me to leave the shot. So I left the shot, and she got taken out of the cell and had to go to an outside hospital. They rushed her to an outside hospital. And they had locked the cell, and only at that time did the people in the cell notice that I too was bleeding, as the blood was dripping from my wrist onto the floor where I was standing. So they called the authorities again, and they came and they took me to the hospital inside the prison, where I received 7 stitches for my injury. So to diffuse the situation between me and this woman, they moved me to another section that is also awaiting trial. And I was there for another 2 weeks, but the day before I went to court and got bail, I met this woman in the passage in the prison, and she was accompanied by 2 of her section officials. And as soon as she saw me, she froze and started apologizing profusely for her actions and what she had done. And I didn't really say anything, and the only thing I asked her was, why didn't you just respect me from the word get-go, the way I had respected you? And she didn't have an answer. Well, that was the last I saw of that lady. I haven't ever seen her again in my life. And after the fact, I found out that she had to get 22 stitches from her neck down to her nipple from the injury that I had inflicted on her. And I also learned that no charges was laid against me, because apparently she was a huge troublemaker within the prison, and the authorities actually had their hands full with her. So in a sense, I was doing them a favor by doing what I did. So yeah, that was my introduction to that sentence that I received afterwards. So, with that said, let me serve you your main meal for the day. Prison is not nice. There are so many people that hold on to this belief that prison is nice. And contrary to popular belief, a prisoner don't really have any rights. Yes, according to our constitution, they have a lot of rights. But in practice, those rights are hardly ever enforced and implemented, or even acknowledged. Currently within our country, we are faced with many challenges that undermines our constitution and our fundamental rights as citizens of this country. Challenges such as poverty, unemployment, poor service delivery, and many more important issues. If the needs of law-abiding citizens are not met, if the precepts within our constitution is not applied to those for whom it was written, what do you think would be the state of affairs for people who were condemned to a life of imprisonment and correction? Do you really believe that a life in prison can be compared to a life in an hotel? Given our current situation, do you really believe that government would entertain the comforts of those behind bars? Well, speaking from experience, the notion that prisoners have hot water on a regular basis is not true. It's not true, especially during the winter months. Sometimes weeks would go by without having access to hot water. And many times, when it does come back on, it comes in the form of steam blasting out of the taps. At one stage, I remember someone was injured through that steam. They burnt. And it was so bad that the person had to be taken to an outside hospital. So obviously, this person, her family on the outside, wanted to know what happened, and they sort of made a noise. So, because of that, officials came to our section and informed us that they had to close the hot water valve until further notice. Needless to say that the whole winter passed without us having any access to running hot water. The notion that prisoners gets 3 full meals per day is not true. Well, it's not true in the prisons where I've been. It's not true. And I've been to a couple of them. You are served with a spoon or a cup of millimil pap that's often infected with maggots, and a cup of tepid tea. And this is served to you by 8 o'clock in the morning. You are also given 1 spoon of brown sugar. And it's up to you to decide whether you want this sugar in your pap or in your cup of tepid tea. Your next meal, which is also your last meal for the day, is served between 11 and 12 o'clock in the afternoon. The menu alters per day. Like, say for instance, today is chicken, tomorrow is beef, another day it's pork, another day it's fish, Another day it's 2 boiled eggs. Now this may sound exotic to some of you, but let me tell you, when you are given a piece of fat, pork fat, with hairs sticking out of it, accompanied by cabbage that has been steamed and it has no taste and it is drenched in water, with mealie rice that is often also infected with maggots. Exotic is the last word that comes to my mind. Now, with this meal, you are issued with 4 slices of brown bread. And if you are lucky, you can also get a cup of colored water, famously known in our prisons as busasa. So this meal you have to finish in the dining hall, because a lot of prisons, especially at male prisons, they do not permit you to go back to your sleeping quarters with food. So from 12 o'clock in the afternoon until tomorrow morning 8 o'clock, as they say in prison, mzoba strong. Mzoba strong. That's all you can do. There's also the notion that prisoners have TVs in prison. Well, let me tell you, there was a system implemented by a company called Sondolo, and it was set up in such a way that each cell was fitted with a 32-inch screen on one side of the wall in the cell. And there was no remote given to the inmates whereby they could control the channels. No. It had a mainframe that was run and controlled by officials from where it was installed in one of their security offices. Initially, it only played religious and non-fiction content. But as the system deteriorated for some reason or another, eventually it was set to one channel, which the whole prison had to watch. The chosen channel depended on the geography of the prison. Like, for instance, if you were in Cape Town, in Worcester, in those places in the Western Cape, you could watch the channel that played Sewende Laan. So that was the channel for the day, so that they could watch Sewende Laan. And then if you were in Westville, in Durban, you could watch Backstage. That was the channel that everybody had to watch. And then if you were in Sun City, in Johannesburg, you could watch Generations. And that was the channel that everybody had to watch. So, mind you, I'm speaking from a female prison point of view, and things might have been slightly different in a male prison. However, the whole program collapsed somewhere around 2013, if I'm correct, when Sondolo cut the signals because DCS had failed to pay them for their services. I stand to be corrected again, but this was the explanation I was given by one of the Sondolo technicians when I found him in the passage, busy disconnecting this system. So since then, TVs in the female prison has been non-existent in the big cells. But through my contacts with males in other prisons, we know that some of them have been granted access, or they've been able through tedious processes to get TVs from outside that they had to pay for personally. However, those inmates remain a minority because very few inmates can afford to buy their own TVs. And even fewer of those inmates knows the processes of the law. And also, only one TV per unit is allowed, and the payment of the TV license for that TV remains the sole responsibility of the prisoner on whose name the TV came in. So now, to sip from the glass of prison is a walk in the park. Let me tell you, it really is not. Prison is not a walk in the park. It is an everyday struggle, and it is literally a matter of survival of the fittest. To go back to a negative environment such as prison, you either have to have serious psychological issues that you haven't dealt with properly, which is what happened in my case, or you are a member of one of those gangs that thrives in prison. Either way, whether a person reoffends or not is not something I feel that can be left solely as the responsibility of the state. I will emphasize again, as I do in each of my videos, the importance of the role of society with regards to the reintegration of offenders back into society and reducing the risk of reoffending. Especially if you are associated with or through blood related to someone that has committed a crime, then the onus is on you to help them, to help that person deal with any unresolved issues in a constructive way. There are many other things that I can talk about that is not true about what is happening in prison, the misconceptions that people have about life in prison. But I've chosen these 3 for the purpose of this channel, just to give you an insight as to what really is happening in prison. If you agree with me or not on certain issues that I've dealt with in this installment, or even if you have any suggestions or criticism, please leave your message in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. But most importantly, please share this video, as I know it will make a difference for someone somewhere. Stay tuned to my channel. I look forward to seeing you in the next installment. Thank you so much. God bless.